I'm going to start off with St. Mary's and their season preview going into the 24-25 season. So obviously this is a team that has done very well over the last few seasons. This is a team that has made the NCAA tournament three straight times. They have made it 4 of the last 5 tournaments. They have been a 5 seed each of the last 3 seasons. Back in 21-22, 26-8, 22-23, 27-8, 23-24, 26-8. Pretty consistent on what we have seen from St. Mary's over the last few years. They are the reigning 2-time WCC champion, regular season champion. They are the reigning WCC tournament champion. And for everything that has been said about what Gonzaga looks like, and I have said it too, that they look like the clear favorite, let's keep in mind that this is still St. Mary's league actually to lose this year. Like, they are the defending champ on both fronts. They are looking at potentially 3 straight conference regular season championships for the first time ever. They are looking to go to their 4th straight NCAA tournament, which would be the first time ever. And a lot was made about what St. Mary's lost in the offseason. And there was plenty to kind of chew on there. You lose Alex Dukas, Mason Forbes, as they ran out of eligibility. Then you lose Joshua Jefferson. You lose Aiden Mahaney. You lose your associate head coach, Justin Joyner. And yes, a lot of times losing an assistant doesn't mean a lot. This one felt actually a bigger thing than maybe most coaches leaving at a certain time. One of the 2 top 100 recruits that St. Mary's had recruited, Zion Sensley, decommitted. And so there was a lot of angst, but there was panic on what this team was going to look like without 3 of your starters, 2 of whom who left via transfer. What you would look like without your incoming class having an additional ESPN top 100 kid. You do still have one of them coming in Mikey Lewis. But what was St. Mary's going to look like without this group? And then very quickly, we saw how they were able to rebound, how they were able to replenish the cupboard. So again, Mikey Lewis was another one of those ESPN top 100 kids that was coming in, and he is still here. Polis Morauskis, who is coming in from Arizona, the Lithuanian transfer from Arizona. He had a very, very good summer and does look like someone who's going to kind of fit right into what St. Mary's is going to do at that 4 spot. He does look like he's going to slot in as a starting 4 right away. There was also the additions of Ashton Hardaway, who came over from Memphis. Yes, that is Penny Hardaway's son, who came over, who is going to, I think, need a little bit more time to grow, a little bit more opportunity there to kind of get into the rotation. There was another top 100 kid that came over who also had decommitted from his previous school, Liam Campbell, one of the top recruits from the state of Idaho, originally had committed to USC, but decommitted after their head coach, Andy Enfield, had left. So this was another opportunity for St. Mary's to pick up someone else. And then on the coaching front, they picked up a very familiar name, and that being E.J. Rowland. E.J. Rowland was the St. Mary's point guard from 2003 to 2005. He was on Randy Bennett's first NCAA tournament team. His return after 20 years of playing professional basketball overseas is a really welcome sight. Was looking over the roster of coaches, and really the only coach, there's only 2 members of the entire coaching staff at St. Mary's who didn't go to St. Mary's, and one of them happens to be Randy Bennett. You have a slew of former St. Mary's players on this coaching staff. Obviously, Mickey McConnell is still there. You have Joe Rahan. You have Dan Sheets. Now you have E.J. Rowland. You have a ton of guys with playing experience for Randy Bennett. And it really, to me, this really does speak to just how much the community and how much of a great feeling that Randy has built with that program, and just that he has players coming back coaching for that squad. And again, the entire coaching staff is Gaels right now. So interesting to kind of see how that's going to play out with him on the bench. So a lot did leave, but they were able to replenish pretty quickly, I thought. And one of the things I looked at, I wanted to see was, I had two players in mind, or two positions in mind, that really I felt needed to be addressed. And going in, I felt pretty confident about where the starting lineup was going to be. But I had a question about the three. I did question whether Luke Barrett being at the three was a long-term solution. We know the type of player is. He was a big hustle guy. He had some really good offensive games a year ago. Career high 19 in one of those contests. So we saw the glimpses of what Luke Barrett could be, or what his potential was. But what he largely was just, it's a role guy, the gritty guy. I almost kind of like think about, if I turn the clock back and think about some other guys, Bo Levesque is kind of one of those guys I kind of liken to a Luke Barrett, that kind of did all the little things, did all the right things to help you win games, but never really was like a focal point of what you needed to think about on a scouting report or whatnot. But they also hosted the blue and white game the other night over the weekend, and this was kind of my first look to see St. Mary's in their setting and in their scrimmage. And Luke Barrett has made a huge jump, or at least it looks like in the one time to be able to see him. The defense is still there, but his offensive game started to come much easier in the flow of this offense. He found his shot a lot easier. He was a little bit more patient when he was taking those opportunities. He also, not that this was ever the case, but he looks so much more sure. He knows exactly when he should shoot, when he shouldn't. And seeing him be, I think, a little bit more active part of this offense, it's clicked for him. Now that maybe it is because now this is his spot. This is his role. With Alex Dukas gone, he's been able to slide into that starting spot and has kind of grabbed it by the horns. So far, seeing in the preseason, Luke Barrett looks much improved, and I think this is going to be a huge lift for St. Mary's, because that was one spot I was a little unsure of going into the year. And then the other one was the growth of Jordan Ross. I've been on board of saying basically the last 7 months since the season ended, that Jordan Ross is the next guy. He is going to be the one who has the talent to raise this team to the next level, to really take over this squad when he wants to. And he had a couple of those. We saw moments and glimpses a year ago. The assist to Mitchell Saxon for the game-winning bucket against UNLV. The play that he had against Grand Canyon in the NCAA tournament. He was like one of the only guys who really I felt was effective in that game. And in the scrimmage the other day, you could just see how much he's grown in the offseason. His command of the offense, his ability to move the ball, his ability to run Randy Bennett's system. He's able to find his own basket. He's able to attack the rim. Defensively, he doesn't miss a beat. And I think that was one of the other challenges for Jordan Ross going into this year, is whether or not he could balance the two. Now, obviously, going into this year, we know Augustus Marshallonis, who is the reigning WCC Player of the Year, is the guy. He is the point guard for this team. But now they're going to be out there with 2 point guards at all times, more or less. Between Jordan Ross, between Marshallonis, this is a backcourt now that is going to liken very much to many of the other backcourts we have seen over the Randy Bennett tenure. And we don't have to look back that far to kind of see some of those combos. We've seen the the Joe Rayhan, Emmett Nar, Jordan Ford. We've seen the Mickey McConnell, Matthew Dellavedova. We've seen the Dellavedova, Stephen Holt combinations. We've seen multiple versions of 2 point guard sets from this coaching staff, from Randy, that having Jordan Ross in the backcourt there, really honestly, like, you look at the kind of the totality, it's a lot of their best teams had those 2 point guard sets. The Sweet 16 team had a 2 point guard set. The Jock Landale years had 2 point guard sets. Like, you had a lot of the best St. Mary's teams have had 2 point guards, and this is going to give them, I think, a lot more opportunity to play up tempo. That's something I also saw. They played way more up tempo on Saturday than we're used to seeing over the last few years. So that's also an exciting thing to see, that maybe we won't see as much of like the slow it down, boring basketball that we're used to seeing. So two guys that I thought are going to be huge difference makers. There needed to be difference makers for St. Mary's to continue this run. Really showed out well in the first public outing, I should say. Obviously, a long season, long way to go before any of those decisions are actually not decision, but like that feeling is finalized that yes, these are the guys who are going to be, that they're going to be able to get them over the hump. But early on, those two really stood out in that setting. And I started talking about the guys who need to make a difference, but then we can't forget about the guys who already make a difference. And yes, I talked a little bit about Augustas Marciulionis, and the fact that you have the WCC Player of the Year returning obviously is a huge deal. This is someone who just got better and better and better as the season went along a year ago. We know how much he struggled early on. We know how bad it looked. We all saw it. But we also saw how much better he got in December and in January and in February. He just got more confident. He really took over this team and made it his own. Like, you look at his WCC numbers alone, it's like 14 points per game, 6.5 assists, 3.4 assists the turnover ratio. He's over 3 rebounds a game. He was kind of the motor to that team a year ago. And yes, like, there were obviously other pieces that kind of helped them over the hump in certain ways. Like, yes, Aidan Mahaney had some of those breakout games here and there. But Marciulionis was the consistency. He was the one that was really kind of like making this ship go, running that offense and running it in a way that obviously made them a team that limited their mistakes and were not going to beat themselves. And of course, like, he's also a really good defender on his own at that point guard side. And I think that's one of the things we're going to continue to see is like his growth and how much better he's going to get. It was funny. I was watching the game, watching that scrimmage the other day. Didn't really notice him all too much in that first half as Jordan Ross was getting going, Luke Barrett was getting going. But then it was like right at the start of the second half, he rolls off like 6-8 straight points. And it's like, yep, there he is. Whenever he wants to turn it on, he can turn it on. And so it was just the reminder that, hey, it's like when he knows it's time to take over a game, he can absolutely take over a game. This group also returns Mitchell Saxon, the reigning Defensive Player of the Year in the WCC. And he has been one of the better defensive players in the WCC for the last 5 years. And we know that he's a great rebounder. We know he's a good shot blocker. We know he defends the paint well. We also know that he's going to give you somewhere around like that 10, 11 point per game as well. Like, so you're going to see that 11 and 7, 11 and 8, 12 and 8, something like that on a night in, night out basis from Saxon. And that just continues to anchor now a front court that is pretty deep at the center spot. And they are going to be able to size up with a lot of teams that might potentially could give them mismatches on that side. Because also you bring back Mitchell Saxon, who is obviously going to be an anchor to that front court and that defense. You also bring Harry Wessels back. And he was banged up at the end of last year. He didn't play the NCAA tournament. He didn't play in the WCC tournament. But he should be back this year. He should be back and healthy. And just the piece of what we saw, it's like Harry Wessels, like, to me, is one of, like, going to be the potential breakout stars, like, for this squad, because as we transition from Saxon to the next wave, not to say that Saxon's not going to get his minutes, because obviously he will. But it's going to be harder and harder to not give Harry Wessels minutes this year. And I think that's going to be more to the point. There's also a lot of excitement and talk about the redshirt freshman, Andrew McKeever, 7'3", who also looks like someone who could contribute right away. Someone who also, I saw him during the scrimmage. He looked good, matching up against Saxon most of the game. And then again, like, this team is actually maybe not quite as the talent. It's not piece for piece talent on the bench, but I really like also what Kevin Gadd is going to provide. I also like what Cade Bennett is going to provide. And yes, Randy's son, like, he does look like he is going, in a pinch, he's going to be someone who can be a competent option out there and give you some solid minutes as if needed. Now, one of the other guys that is probably going to be first off the bench for this team that I'm really excited about, and I mentioned him already, is Mikey Lewis. 6'3" guard, big time talent, and he is instant offense for this team. One of the exciting things I liked watching him the other night was the fact that in the flow of this offense, as he got to play with the first team, he knew how to fit right in. He knew where the looks were. He understood the offense very quickly. Unlike a lot of freshmen who may try to find their own shot right away, who may not be able to read a defense as quickly, he's able to read it right away. Like, you could see just how he's processing the defenses, how he's processing the looks. He's not looking to be just like, I get the ball and it ends with me. He's looking to kind of move it through the offense, whatever's the best option for that play he's looking for. And I think that's a big thing to see from a freshman, especially on a Randy Bennett team. Like, you don't see a ton of freshmen be able to break through and get a lot of minutes. I think Mikey Lewis is going to be one of those guys who's going to make an immediate impact and be another factor as we get deeper and deeper into this season. And the one thing about this squad is, of course, the talent is here. This is a team that, as just mentioned earlier, preseason KenPom 34. This is a team that is largely predicted to finish second in the WCC. But what's the path back to the NCAA tournament? What's the path back to a WCC championship? What would be a path back to a 5 seed? 5 seed might be a little bit of a stretch for this squad, but looking at what this team is going to be and what they need to do in the non-conference, November, December. They struggled out the gate last year. They were 3-4 at one point. And it wasn't until that Colorado State game in December that kind of like the pressure was lifted off of this squad, and they felt like that they were now finally pointed in the right direction. I think it's going to be a little bit of an easier path early on to kind of get flowing, to get going. Looking at that, again, the schedule, you start off with Towson, you have Chattanooga, you have Akron, you're going to be neutral to Nebraska, Stanislaus State, Cal Poly. Everything before Thanksgiving gives them the opportunity. There are good teams in here. Chattanooga is going to be good. Akron's going to be good. You get a Power 5 in Nebraska. You've got some challenges here that I think will allow St. Mary's to figure out some of those rotations, figure out some of like the flow and the comfortability with everybody on this roster, because there's still a lot of new pieces to this team, and you're going to need some time to kind of get up to that. They have, what's it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games before they will head to Palm Desert to take on USC and then take on either New Mexico or Arizona State. Those 2 games are going to be huge, obviously, for the non-conference, for the resume. At Utah is going to be a big deal, even though Utah has been picked to finish last in the Big 12. Boise and Utah State are also huge games because those are 2 teams that are also going to have aspirations for the NCAA tournament. So looking at that stretch, again, I'm looking at USC, the second game of the tournament, at Utah, Boise, Utah State. I think this squad needs to be probably split in Palm Desert, split the Boise, Utah State. You have to win at Utah. Like, the fact that they're picked last concerns me a bit on the opportunity that if you lose to that team, that could be a bad loss. Even if it's on the road right now, who knows what that KenPom number is going to look like, that net number is going to look like when they get into February and March. So I think St. Mary's needs to finish 11-2, 10-3 in the non-conference to put themselves in a good position. Now, I'm pretty confident that they can pull this off, even if it's like, say, they might, and I'm very questionable on whether or not I think they can get away with 9-4 in the non-conference based on the rest of the schedule. But if they can get the double-digit wins in the non-conference, which for the St. Mary's team is a very realistic possibility, that puts them in a good position once they enter conference play in late December. This is still a top 2 WCC team until proven otherwise. I know Santa Clara has aspirations of moving up. USF has aspirations of moving up. You have the newcomer Washington State, who might be in that mix, although I still think that they're a little separated from those other 2. But this is also a team that is going to be searching for a 3rd straight WCC championship. This is still the growth of this program. Gonzaga has obviously been the dominant team for the last quarter century. St. Mary's has been right there with them for the last, I would say, 15 years. And they have the opportunity to do something they haven't done. And to think about that, this is a Gonzaga team that is predicted to go deep into March, is a preseason top 10 team, and all those accolades are warranted. But the St. Mary's team, the St. Mary's squad, is going to be trying to do something they've never done. And that is win the WCC regular season championship for a 3rd straight year. And based on what Gonzaga looks like, based on what St. Mary's looks like, I do think that there's always a possibility that St. Mary's can take one of those 2. They're 4-4 in the last 8 meetings with Gonzaga. Let's not completely overlook the fact that these 2 have played pretty evenly over the last few years. And if they can add that feather to the cap going into this season against a Gonzaga team that is also supposed to be as highly rated as they might be, this is a Gonzaga team who I could very easily see end up being at number 1 at some point, just for the sake of the other conference schools are just going to beat the crap out of each other in the rest of the teams ahead of them. By the time St. Mary's sees them in February and in March, that could be an opportunity one more time to actually knock off the number 1 team in the country. Could that catapult St. Mary's into a higher seed? Absolutely. While I think like the St. Mary's team, like there's right now, to me, this is still a team that is going to finish no lower than 2 in the WCC. I think there is an outside shot that they could still be the WCC regular season champion. They're still a tournament team in my eyes, but they're going to have to get it done in the non-conference. That non-conference is a good enough schedule to get you in, But with one or two of those losses, even as we saw last year, some of those teams ended up being not as good, or a couple years ago, some of those teams ended up not being as good as we thought they would be. I don't think that you don't have the San Diego State in there like you've had the last couple of years. Obviously you don't have a Houston in there like you had 2 years ago. But the St. Mary squad is going to have plenty of opportunities to get wins that will put them in position. And I think more so than Santa Clara, more so than USF, is obviously very capable of getting those wins and putting themselves in position to do what they've been able to do the last few years. And that's get back to the NCAA tournament. And then also outside of last year, advance in the tournament as well.